Hi, this is Avebuan. Dementia is defined as a cognitive decline progressive illness, meaning it gets worse over time. It also affects more than one aspect of thinking, meaning it may affect language, behavior, memory, and visual perception, and is severe enough to affect everyday life. In this video, I will share the top 10 short films to show the impact dementia has to the patient, family, and carers' lives. Stay until the end and I will provide you with practical tools to use while navigating life caring for a person with dementia. Let's get started. Filmed in 2013, Denise Thomas talks about life with Randy, her husband of 35 years, who was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia in 2009. She described the personality changes, like being angry, nasty, and abusive verbally, though never physically to her. The idea of placing him in a care facility is heart-wrenching for Denise, and that guilt made her question herself whether that was the right decision. She further said that living with Randy now is like living with a stranger, as the man she knew and loved is not there anymore. Randy had lost the ability to connect with people and could no longer display affections, empathy, and the ability to maintain any conversation due to the difficulty of communicating with him. She tearfully confesses that it really is a huge loss for her, for their children and grandchildren. Filmed in 2019, Olive's husband noticed that her mental arithmetic was declining and that she couldn't remember the words to express herself. She had to explain what the word was, and her husband would supply them. That's when they decided to go see a doctor who, after a series of tests, told her she had vascular dementia. She doesn't really think about the future. She doesn't know what it holds for her when she was diagnosed with vascular dementia. As like many people, she didn't know what that meant. But she knew it was affecting her ability to find the right words, and that she struggled to understand people. She and her husband Ronnie reflect on what the future might hold. Ned Nardo Cabrera of Billings was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia in 2016 at the age of 53. At the time of the filming, he was 54 years old and living with primary progressive aphasia. He knows that in time, he would lose the ability to communicate. During the filming, he recounts that he gets words mixed up and that his writing is terrible. He gets frustrated when he cannot understand people's conversation, especially during the evenings when he struggles the most. But he worries more about his wife and his children, more than himself, and that after being diagnosed, his outlook is now to enjoy life and spend time with his family. Filmed in 2018, in the first story, Ronnie talks about his wife, Mandy Bishop, who is in a respite home 73 kilometers away from where he lives. Although a lot of people tells him to move on, he just could not. He doesn't feel like it's a cross he's carrying at his back, as he surely feels that if the situation has been reversed, she would do the same thing and take care of him. He feels that she's still his best friend, and he visits her every Sunday and stays with her for 2 hours. He described her as a shell of the person he once knew, and that the most important part is dead and gone, and that there's basically a body left. He keeps a tally of how many days he's taken her to that care home, as a sort of logical sanity. And when he thinks about that day he took her to the rest home, he never loses the guilt of betrayal, and that was probably the worst day of his life. Mandy's mother died from early onset frontotemporal dementia at 82 years old, and after that, Mandy found out that she too has FTD. At the end of the day, when he starts to unwind, is when he questions himself the point of all this. as he feels like he's been shot but he's not dead. He just feels numb. At the start of the diagnosis, he goes out at night and just screams while looking at the moon. In the second story, Matt Ferris talked about his wife Claire and the start of their love story way back in 1969 in Wellington. He says Claire always made him smile and that living together was always nice. He visits her almost every day, sometimes twice a day, because he looks forward to seeing her face. Claire was diagnosed with vascular dementia at 62 years old, and Matt wants to be around as long as Claire is around. Both of these men feel like abandoning someone in trouble, pushing something aside that they can't handle, and that sensation is what basically is their guilt. But they concede that there will always be an empty room and an empty heart waiting for their wives. Filmed in 2016, Jim recounted the day his wife was diagnosed in 2013 and is now in stage 6 or possibly 7. He described her as always friendly, talkative, and used to do the checkbook. Now she couldn't even cook. Jim defined Alzheimer as a nasty disease which eats away at a person. His wife doesn't recognize him anymore. In the hospice, they give her some medication to slow down the disease, but when asked if he's going to take her to a care facility, he refused and said that over his dead body would he take her there, because he knows she won't fit in, as there are so many things going on in her mind. They've been married for 54 years, and honoring their pledge, he will stay with her until death comes and part them. He just wants his old friend back. Are you still there? This is the story of Florence and Linda of Las Vegas, a mother and daughter that are battling Alzheimer's disease together. Linda said that although her mother is still alive, she's already lost her. Her mother, Florence, is 87 years old and can remember things that happened a long time ago, like being a special education teacher in New York and her address 40 years ago in Brooklyn. But she couldn't identify the date today. Florence is staying at Cleveland Clinic Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health, which provides outstanding support services for caregivers and clinical care for patients. Filmed in 2011, Lisa Marie Serasoli demonstrates what it really means to have Alzheimer's disease, which her grandmother Nora Jo is suffering. Lisa left to run an errand when someone told her grandmother that her husband was dead after repeatedly being instructed not to. When she returned from the store, she had to console her grandmother as she was already crying over his death. Nora Jo repeat herself as most Alzheimer's patients, and that could be challenging for caregivers, although that's no reason to be cruel to them. She further stated that there's compassion in lying to spare heartbreak. In this film, 4 patients with dementia share their insights and experiences of living with advancing dementia. Barry, who has lived with dementia for more than 15 years, is aware of the changes the disease brought. He's afraid to go out as he has this feeling that he's done something wrong, that he's not any good to anybody. He feels useless, defeated, and compares himself to an animal whose only existence is to be fed, washed, and sleep. He is still able to articulate and expresses how he feels, although sadly could no longer do singular activity like making tea. Olive, who has been living in the care home for 2 years, describes her feelings about dementia as awful and terrible. She is at that stage where she refuses to talk to people to avoid repeating herself. Judy, who was diagnosed with dementia 11 years ago, began experiencing visual perception and orientation problems. She used to have fun, but could no longer go outside, even to the shops. She said it's too much of an effort. Although she knows who she is, she can't identify the place where she is. Her daughter Karen, who knows her needs and feelings, supplies her the words she can't find to express herself. Karen described that her mother wants to do things she used to enjoy, but could no longer do them anymore nor express herself. Not lacking in insight, that makes it really difficult as she knows the things she wants to do, but couldn't do them anymore. Her mother looks back in time and gets sad, as she feels she could have done other things. Bob talks about how dementia has changed his life. Receiving full-time care for 2 years, he said that it seems to get harder and harder to do those things he used to do. He can't concentrate on one thing for a long time. His wife Sally explains that Bob has hallucinations and mistaken beliefs, even creating problems like when they had to get out as Bob thinks his room is on fire. And when he gets hallucinations, it's extremely real to him and sees things that aren't actually happening. He moved into a care facility when, in 2 occasions, he was found on his rooftop and couldn't explain how and why he got there. All 4 of them feel powerless having dementia. They define it as a silent illness, the sort that creeps up on you, and the feeling of loneliness, not understanding this disease that would attack their mind, that it could happen to anybody but not to them. It's like a persistent spy, someone unrecognizable but leaves devastating, noticeable effects. They conclude that dementia has taken away their identity, that even if they're still them, it's just their essence that's left. Their family feels that they're still their mom, husband, and father. Filmed in 2020, Sarah Ashton shares her lived experience with dementia and discusses the impact of diagnosis, coping with change, relationships and communication, planning for the future, and staying healthy. It was her mother, 6 months before she died, who pointed out to her that there was something wrong with her memory. At that time, Sarah reasoned out that on one hand, she was caring for her mother while also working full-time. After insisting on her going to visit a doctor, she finally saw one about 3 months after her mother's death. She was confined in the hospital and couldn't pinpoint the number of times she had brain surgery in 2013. The usual tasks of reading a report and analyzing it was no longer working for her. She couldn't remember what she had read in a previous page. After a series of neuro tests, she was told that she wouldn't be able to work again. The deterioration she had within a 12-month will not allow her to go back to her former employment. She further detailed that her memory is no longer like that of a goldfish, which could retain memory for 12 weeks. Now, her memory capacity equals that of a fruit fly, which is capable of remembering for 27 seconds. She's lost her capacity for big picture comprehension. She couldn't plan anything anymore. She started having speech problems. Being 56 years old and having worked upward the system, being a nurse until becoming executive officer and took some area roles in Port Macquarie, she stated that having dementia is functionally exhausting, feeling all right one day and the next day flat on the floor. She felt that with dementia, she has lost her privacy. Being fiercely independent, now she could hardly mow her lawn. She had to get somebody to help her with the garden. Filmed in 2018, The video indicates that the number of sufferers of dementia under the age of 65 has increased dramatically by more than 300% in Singapore. George Chong, 48 years old, is suffering from dementia. Diagnosed in 2015, he began forgetting things and started having personality changes. His wife remarked that he needs to exert a lot of effort to actually understand what she was trying to tell him. George was a chemistry teacher at his own center and a published author. When he was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's disease, he was determined not to believe. Instead, he did a lot of physical sports, running and swimming. Even going back to school as a teacher made him believe will make him get back to his old self, until one of his colleagues phoned his wife to ask her what was wrong with George, as he seemed very forgetful. He stopped working, and the responsibility of taking care of the family of 5 members fell on Lynn, his wife, who is a part-time tutor. Lynn has not worked for nearly 20 years, as it was George who has always been the family breadwinner. She felt that she had lost her sidekick. George now works in a cafe to be mentally engaged. So here are some practical tools for dementia patients. Portable radio cassettes, CD players, downloaded music from internet or from apps like Spotify. As I have stated in the video previously uploaded, music plays a significant role in the lives of dementia patients, their families, and those caring for them. Music increases social interaction. It sets the mood for relaxation and as comfort for everybody during agitated times. Coloring books or any adult activity book. Just like music, these are essential aids on a one-on-one participation and offers through color combination and in a calm way to sort out the figures. Life-size soft baby-like dolls are a fantastic aid to calm and soothe agitated dementia patients. With these dolls, patients feel useful and needed and awakens their sense of maternal and paternal protection. These dolls also eases feelings of isolation and loneliness. Do you use other practical tools for your dementia loved one? Please share it with us by commenting below. Thank you.